I won't mince words with you. I think that my message will be pretty plain, which is we're at a political crossroads in this country. Our institutions have been degraded and politicized. The federal government and its agencies that are supposed to serve nonpartisan interests have been weaponized against citizens like you and me. We're at a very difficult time because these agencies are dividing at the same time as being weaponized against us, dividing Americans in the name of DEI. The left is drawing straight aim and taking us towards a Marxist cliff. We now live in a world, true story, where a semiconductor plant can't be built because they haven't hired enough ex-cons. And broadband can't be deployed because small contractors haven't submitted their climate action plan. 8,000 well-trained military men and women were fired for not taking the COVID shot. And we're losing recruits because of Marxist struggle sessions. Agencies like the Department of Justice, the FBI, the IRS, and others have massive power and are aiming that power at American citizens simply because they disagree with their narrative. Attorney General Merrick Garland went after parents for simply showing up to school board meetings. They're targeting Catholics. The FBI held pre-bunking meetings with social media companies to try to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. The IRS specifically targeted conservatives and conservative groups. And maybe worst of all, the left has co-opted now the justice system to go after Joe Biden's chief political rival, President Trump, at the behest of Joe Biden. He gave that order in November of 2022. After the midterm elections, Joe Biden said he's going to use every legal means necessary to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. And then guess what? All these zombie legal cases were resurrected by the likes of Alvin Bragg and Letitia James and Fani Willis and Jack Smith. You have people like Alvin Bragg who ran on getting Trump, ran for office to prosecute Donald Trump, and that's exactly what he did. You have people like Fani Willis and Jack Smith taking aim at President Trump to keep him preoccupied, off the ballot, or maybe in jail for the rest of his life. This is election interference. And our founders were very well aware of this, and they'd be rolling in their graves right now if they saw what was happening. This is completely unprecedented in our lifetimes. If it happened in another country, our State Department will be issuing travel warnings and issuing sanctions. But it's happening right here in this country, and it's not 1984, it's 2024. So let's back up for 1 second and talk about how we got here. There has been a slow march in this degradation of our institutions and a power creep from the left that's taken years and years. And now it's culminating in their ultimate goal, which is complete power and control. For years, the left has been slowly amassing power, smearing their political opponents, and infiltrating our institutions. You could see it bubbling up under the surface. Even when President Trump was first elected, Trump presented such a threat to these forever bureaucrats and elites that they knew they had to keep him out of office. And in many ways, you hear this language even now. He's such a threat to democracy that they're willing to bulldoze democracy. It was the COVID-19 pandemic, though, I think, for a lot of people, where they actually tuned into this and they saw what was happening. And it helped reveal exactly what the left was up to and what they would do with essentially unlimited power. And it opened the floodgates for where we're at right now. During COVID, I would often say that power doesn't necessarily corrupt, power reveals. And when the pandemic hit, the left and the Democrats knew they had a golden opportunity. They stoked fear, they fanned the flames, and they capitalized on that fear to institute draconian measures. If you didn't follow them, you were selfish. You didn't care about your neighbors. You wanted grandma to die. The othering had begun. They attempted to force 80 million Americans to get the COVID shot or lose their jobs. By the way, from an agency, OSHA, which was created to make sure forklifts beep when they back up. They tried to institute vaccine passports. They tried to institute travel restrictions. They filled skateboard parks with sand and closed down beaches. There are no more ball washers on golf courses, still to this day, because they were taken out during COVID, and playgrounds were closed. They kept our kids out of school and caused unimaginable learning loss that we're still dealing with today. They shut down churches, gyms, gathering spots. They prevented people from saying goodbye to their loved ones in hospitals. Attorney General Merrick Garland used the full weight and force of the Department of Justice to try to investigate parents who dared question this madness and showed up to school board meetings. The consequences have been devastating, not only for our republic, not only for individual rights, but for our kids. While they were instituting all these draconian measures, if you dared to challenge the narrative around COVID-19, Joe Biden and the Democrats had something to say about that too. The Biden regime instituted one of the largest censorship enterprises in history. They colluded with social media companies to censor speech on COVID-19. The FBI, as I mentioned earlier, met with social media companies, even though they knew the laptop was real in November of 2019. They met with these social media companies to say it was a lie. This was a Russian hack and leak operation. They didn't want the information out before the election. There were special reporting portals for the federal government employees to flag posts quicker to take down with social media companies. Senior White House officials demanded that Facebook show them how they plan to censor more, all while Joe Biden and others threatened these social media companies from the bully pulpit, holding Section 230 protections over their heads. Their playbook has been set. Create an emergency, issue executive orders, and dare the courts to stop them. Guns, climate action, it's next. The playbook is set. The left showed their true colors during COVID, and as I said earlier, it doesn't necessarily corrupt power, but it reveals. Fast forward to today. Trump is being pursued by Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, Fani Willis, and others on ridiculous charges, all while Joe Biden and his son escape any sort of accountability. 2 tiers of justice. This is banana republic stuff. These cases lack very little factual basis and are based on trumped-up charges for one reason: to interfere with the election. They know Trump's going to win, and they know Biden is a weak candidate, which was on full display just a couple of weeks ago. That feels like a year ago, but that's just a couple of weeks ago on that debate stage. The American people see it. They can't unsee it. This is all the Democrats have left. Emboldened by what they got away with during COVID-19, the left is using our justice system as a weapon to keep Trump off the ballot, to throw him in jail, all to remain in power. They're willing to do just about anything for it, and it's supposedly for your own good. These are Soviet-style show trials, and they're not particularly unique or new, but they are in this country. It happens in places around the world. It's happened for a very long time. But America is supposed to be an exception to this. It's what we mean by American exceptionalism, that we stand out in history, that we believe in individual rights, we believe in dispersing power. We don't think one agency or branch or person should ever become too powerful, and that the people are the sovereign. The government answers to them. But if you have an army of bureaucrats, if you have this administrative state like we have right now, they're not accountable to anybody. And that's what has to fundamentally change. But don't be dismayed, because, by the way, that's part of the demoralization that's supposed to happen before you give up on the things that we believe in. It's the reason why civics isn't taught anymore and why we're left with critical race theory. Because if you taught civics, you would understand that these things that we proudly proclaim to the world, that we believe in individual rights, and we believe that in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's our mission statement. The Constitution provides those structural safeguards. We believe in these things. We're a country, we don't have some single heritage. We believe in this idea. And if you can cut that anchor, if you can untether us from that, that's when they get to believe, or that's when they get to push this narrative in this worldview that they have of collectivism. And so it's important for us to push back. We're at this crossroads. There are 2 paths we can follow. We can either continue to let the left destroy our institutions, weaponize our justice system, and silence dissent, or we can fight back. As for me, I choose to fight. And I'm optimistic that there are plenty of folks in this room and beyond that want to engage in that fight as well. The tide is turning, which is why everyone is here today. The next generation of voters, the young voters, they see what's going on. And the polling bears this out. They're ready for a new form of a conservative movement, one that fights back against these injustices. And they're ready for a new generation of leaders who are willing to fight back, who are not willing to accept it. And by the way, just diagnosing it, a lot of people won't even acknowledge it, but diagnosing it is only half the challenge. You got to do something about it. And I think that's what this is about. Part of leadership is understanding the moment you're in and taking action. If we don't fight back, the Democrats will continue their assault on our foundational ideas, the importance of individual rights and freedoms, an emphasis on merit, and that all men are created equal, and you have an opportunity to achieve equality of opportunity, and we believe in separation of powers. When I served as Missouri's Attorney General, the job that I had before this one, I fought back. The Biden administration's policy, I fought back against those policies each and every step of the way. I was sued against the Biden administration's vaccine mandate, and we won at the Supreme Court. It was Missouri that sued to stop the Biden administration's student loan debt forgiveness scam, and we won at the Supreme Court. I sued over 60 school districts in Missouri for their ridiculous mask policies, and we won. And I filed Missouri versus Biden, which exposed the Biden administration's vast censorship enterprise. This was before Elon Musk had bought Twitter. It's before the Twitter files. If those things didn't happen, if we didn't bring to light the enormity of this effort and the power of the government to quell dissent in the United States, it would still be happening. We sued, and for a while were successful in holding up the Biden administration from reversing Trump's very successful border policies. And now where are we at? 10 million illegal immigrants later. And we're in a town where Democrats today are going to vote against the idea that you have to be you can't be illegal and vote in this country. I mean, they're saying the quiet part out loud now. There are no more secrets. This is an election play for them. And by the way, you don't have to be a citizen to be counted in the census. So who's the real threat to democracy? The illegals. Well, you've got Joe Biden, who has censored Americans, is trying to throw his political opponent in jail for the rest of his life, and has facilitated an invasion of this country. That's the real threat to democracy. Now, I'm in the Senate now, so different job, but that fight is still the same. It's a little different, but we have to have the resolve to do it, and we have to be unapologetic about the fact that we love this country and we're willing to fight for it. So, chipping away at the power of the administrative state, making sure that if you've been censored, you can actually sue yourself, individual government actors that censored you. These are just a few ideas, and there are more that we need to actually turn this tide back. And me and my colleagues have vowed in the Senate to stop going along with the status quo, to make it as painful as possible for Democrats until these political prosecutions against President Trump end. This is a new movement. This gathering here, I think, is a signal that this country is ready for a new generation of leadership and people who are willing to stand up, be unafraid, and fight back. I'm from Missouri, as I mentioned, the Show Me State, and it's a state that has cities, named Liberty and Independence, and towns called Freedom and Defiance. And I think that's the spirit that we want to harness. But if we're going to do this, it can't just be people who are elected to office. It's all of us. So I'm proud to represent Missouri. I'm proud to represent the interests that all of you have in this room, but we've got to do it together. And I think if we do that, if we come together and fight back, not just in government, but in our families, running for school board, in our communities, volunteering, talking to our neighbors, and of course, winning the fight in November, we can end the weaponization of our justice system. We can rebuild our institutions and make life better for all Americans, because this is the greatest country in the history of the world, and it's worth fighting for. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.